Good morning, thank you for joining me for Walking with the Word. Today I want to explore and unpack what the generous life looks like, and I want to start off by looking at generosity as we're most familiar with it, which is giving financially. The Bible says God loves a joyful giver, and I think as we begin to move into the generous life, it's worth thinking about ways that we can give financially in a meaningful way and in a joyful way too. So it's finding the joy of giving. The Bible also says that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And I think when we start this journey of giving financially and freely and joyfully, you begin to experience a blessing of giving, a blessing of seeing things change. But I want to say today, I want to share an idea that the generous life is more than just what we give financially. Generosity is more than just giving, but it's about giving freely, it's about giving joyfully, it's about giving holistically. So what other areas can we give in? Well, yeah, there's our finances, but what about possessions? What about the things that maybe have value to us, things that are perhaps irreplaceable? Generosity is about seeing needs and being willing to meet them and give them, and just giving because it blesses someone. Just give you a really random example, right? Do you know those light blue jackets that say Kazakhstan on them that Borat used to wear? When I was in Kazakhstan, I managed to find one of them in a Kazakh market, and I absolutely loved it, and kind of used to wear it all around the place. And I met this wonderful guy on the plane. Now this guy is basically set up and works this incredible charity where he works with orphans around the world. He was a very generous, lovely guy, and I got into a conversation, and I was wearing this light blue Kazakhstan jacket, and he's like, "Oh, I love that jacket." And I just really felt in my heart that I needed to give it to him to bless him. I was like, "Oh, this is so difficult. I love this jacket." It didn't have a high financial value. It was just cool, it was quirky, it wasn't replaceable. You can't just get them from H&M or any other shop on the high street. It's like quite a unique thing to find in the Kazakh market. I just felt like I needed to give this guy something because he was someone who just had a life of giving. He was a generous person, he had that generous life. So I gave it to him, and I just hope he's enjoyed it and has worn it around the world. And it's just one of those funny little things. But there's an example. It's something that didn't have a high financial value, but it was unique, it was quirky, and it blessed someone. So we've got finances, we've got possessions. It doesn't have to be a high value possession, it just has to be the right thing to the right person at the right time. But then what about time? What about giving your time? Now, since becoming a parent, I have realised that time is such a precious resource. It's a thing that in life, if there's one resource you feel short of, well, actually there's two: time and energy. I'm going to come to energy in a moment, but time and energy are the things that you really lack. There's a saying which I think is really insightful, and I love it. It basically says, when you're young, you have time and you have energy, but you don't have money. When you become an adult, you get a job, you have a family, then you have money and energy, but you don't have time. I don't actually have that much energy. When you grow old and you retire, then you have money and you have time, but you don't have energy. So you always seem to lack one of those things. So at the moment, as a parent, I feel like time is the biggest thing I lack, and it's actually a big sacrifice to give time. But I think part of the generous life is learning to be interruptible. It's learning to be flexible. It's learning to say, actually, there's a need there. That person needs some of my time. They need this conversation, and I'm going to give it. And you stop and you invest the time. So part of this generous life is being willing not just to give money and not just to give possessions, but also to give time. And I think time and energy tend to go together, because if you do have a bit of free time, you can then rest and recoup your energy. But sometimes people have needs which interrupt our energy. I remember hearing about a wonderful friend who would sometimes be woken up in the night to like encourage and share words of encouragement to people, spiritual things, stuff that like they couldn't have known naturally, but God would just prompt them and wake them up, and they'd either find themselves praying or having to contact someone all sorts of times in the night. And that generous life for them was being willing to kind of give up sleep because someone would have a need. Or maybe you have a calling and a passion and a heart for people who are out on the streets at night, broken and hurting, and you feel like you need to go and share with them, but that's going to take quite a lot of your energy. So it's being willing to not just share our time, but also sometimes to share our energy too. And what else does a generous life look like? I think it's being willing to share our skills too. As you kind of grow older and you sort of develop professionally, and you realise that skills have value, they're a valuable thing, and often you'll see people will actually charge money purely for the knowledge and the skill of a particular job. It's not just their time they're charging for, it's the fact that they're qualified and skilled and can do a certain thing. And we need to view our skills as something, A, which have value, but B, which we're willing to give and share and bless people with. So this idea of the generous life is more than just getting into habits of giving financially. I think it's a very holistic thing. I think it affects the way you live and conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis. It affects the way you see people and you meet needs around you. So the generous life, it's about being flexible. So if you've got plans for a day and you've got a schedule and you've got things you need to do, when you see a need, it's being willing to break away from that plan, being flexible. In a related way, it's also about being interruptible. So if you're in the middle of doing something, or if you've made a commitment to do something but something more important comes up, there's a need that should be met, it's about being interruptible, being in tune. And those two things take being a level of sensitivity and awareness to the needs of people around us. Sometimes it's a case that you'll be walking along the street and you'll just see someone who is sat down with a look of brokenness. And it may well be that the generous life is where you have to go up and spark up a conversation and ask someone if they're okay and if there's anything you can do for them and show care to someone. And the social boundaries and the fear of rejection and all that kind of stuff that you have to get over to initiate a conversation like that, that's a generous life. It's being willing to sacrifice your own appearance, your own pride, and it's being willing to put yourself out there, become vulnerable to rejection, in order to spark up a conversation and extend a hand of care and a hand of love to someone who might need it. So this generous life, it begins to manifest in all these different areas. But I want to finish by sharing something that I think the generous life is not, kind of a misconception about it. The generous life isn't about giving indiscriminately and thoughtlessly, because that can actually do more damage. When I fell in love with my beautiful wife Emma, at the time I'd been living and teaching in Malaysia, a beautiful part of the world, a beautiful country, and she had this calling to go and serve and help and bless people and love people in Cambodia. And I went over to join her, and wow, I learned so much about giving tactfully and in the right way. When the first time I got into Siem Reap town, it was just overwhelming, the number of people that would come up asking for money, asking for things. There's this kind of intense begging culture, and I quickly learned that actually it's not helping anyone to give money. It's not helping anyone. There's this thing, it's called the baby milk scam, where they come up and they say, oh, I need some baby milk, can you go into that shop and buy me some baby milk please? And you'd think, oh well, it's, you know, if it's baby milk, it'll help a baby, and of course I'll do that. And you go into the shop, and what happens actually if you do this is you buy the baby milk and give it to them, and then they'll go and basically sell it back to the shop, and it's this kind of scam that the shop's involved with too. So I just got to undo this gate. So the baby milk scam is something that has been going on for years in Siem Reap town. And actually giving to that is just keeping this pattern of people being on the streets. A lot of the children that come up and beg, very sadly, have been put there by adults to beg, and if you give them any money, they'll just take it back to the adults, and then you're just fueling this kind of begging culture. You're making it more lucrative. So it's not about giving carelessly or indiscriminately. Sadly, I actually heard a church leader once saying that he'll just give money to anyone on the streets, because he said if they're an alcoholic and they go and buy a bottle of whiskey, it'll keep them warm at night. So what? He'd rather just be generous. And at first I was thinking, wow, this is like really clever. This is open-minded. This is good. We're just told to give. But then I thought more about it. I was like, would I do that to my brother? If my brother was an alcoholic on the street, would I just go and give him 20 quid on the street and say, there you go and buy yourself some alcohol, stay warm? No, I wouldn't. Actually, it's a misconception. Alcohol doesn't warm you up. What it does is it tricks your body into thinking you're warm, which causes all the capillaries and blood vessels close to the surface of your skin to expand. And in fact, you lose heat more quickly. drinking alcohol when it's actually cold out at night is a really risky thing to do because you lose body heat very quickly. So yeah, this idea was flawed on a kind of medical perspective. It's not going to keep this person warm, it's not going to keep them safe. The idea was also, I think, flawed on the sense of like, it's not showing the love and care for that person that we're called to. And I think the challenge, and what's helped me to understand giving more, is are you giving in a loving way? Would you do the very same thing for your father or mother, or for your brother or sister? Or if they're younger than you, would you do it for your own kids? So if you view the other person as a close relative, like a parent or a sibling or a child, what are you doing? How would you treat them? What would you do for them? And if you would do it for a close sibling who you really love and care for, then it's good to do that for the person that you meet on the street, for the stranger. But if you wouldn't, why not? In what way is it lacking care? In what way are you not helping the person? So I think the generous life is about being open and generous and joyful giving in all of these areas, and not having any of our resources, our time, our energy, our skills, our possessions that we're holding back. But at the same time, it's not just giving everything in a kind of thoughtless way where you just kind of throw money out and just kind of indiscriminately give and give and give, because actually giving can be harmful. And the experience of people who have worked overseas in charity and supporting poor communities and giving into poor communities is that if you give in the wrong way, you can actually do more harm than good. So it's about being wise and prayerful and strategic and really tuning in to people's needs and really thinking about the people that we're giving to and valuing them as human beings, just as we would a brother or a sister or a parent or a child. And that's the challenge, isn't it? It's about seeing people that are strangers, people that we're not related to, as brothers and sisters, because ultimately they're made in the image of God. They're image bearers. They are valuable and they're worth our time, they're worth our giving, they're worth our investment. So I want to finish with a prayer today, and then I'm going to let you guys go, get on with your day. So Father, I pray that you would help us to navigate into this generous lifestyle, help us to understand what the generous lifestyle looks like, help us to live it out, foster an attitude of joy, and help us to have a willing heart, Lord, not to hold on to anything, Lord, but to give freely, just because you gave to us completely freely. If we want to understand generosity, help us to see it in you. You did not spare anything. You gave your very life, the most precious thing in the universe, for us. You are the God who models generosity, you the epitome of the generous life. So help us to see it in you and to reflect that and emanate that generosity and that goodness and that kindness in the world. Right, it's starting to rain, so I'm going to have to go now. God bless you guys, have an amazing day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.